Hello and welcome to my channel. I'm Rob Phillips. Today we're going to be talking about Vedena, or feeling tone, within our meditation practice. I'll begin with some of the more practical aspects of it, and then we'll end with a short guided meditation where we can really put some of the theory into action, so to speak. So if you're already familiar with these concepts, or maybe you've already watched this video before, you can use the timestamp right below to jump right into the guided portion. Otherwise, let's begin with our discussion of Vedena, or feeling tone. So Vedena is kind of intertwined automatically anytime we are doing any sort of mindfulness or Vipassana practice, regardless of the specific form, whether it's noting, whether it's mindfulness of the breath, or any of the various other types. So put quite simply, Vedena relates to the resonance or the feeling tone of anything that we might be noticing. So as we become more aware of our experience, we start to notice that the mind tends to kind of push or pull towards our experience in particular ways. This kind of push or pull, or this relationship with what we're experiencing, could be considered Vedena. So in the most general, kind of broad terms, Vedena comes in three main flavors. So anything we can experience is either pleasant, unpleasant, or neutral. Now, of course, on a surface level, this is the type of thing that seems rather obvious, but there's a little bit more going on beneath the surface that we might want to unpack and explore with this. So we'll begin by discussing the more pleasant form of Vedena, or a relationship with things which we like or we appreciate. Now, on some level, having aspects within our meditation that we like or appreciate isn't a bad thing, and even in some practices, it's a state of mind we deliberately cultivate. For example, in jhana, we are trying to brighten the mind. We are trying to gladden the mind. So it's not something to be avoided categorically. However, like so many things, there's a certain shadow side to this pleasant sort of Vedena, and that is that we can become attached to that which is pleasant. We can cling to it in a way that is not skillful. And as the Buddha taught, anytime that we are clinging to something, that is dukkha, that is suffering in some form. Maybe more specifically, the suffering can come by seeking after those states, or the unhappiness that comes when those pleasant states end. And so we need to be aware of when we are becoming attached to that which is pleasant. And that starts first with just the awareness of knowing when we are aware of something that has this pleasant sort of feeling tone to it. Now, the second sort of Vedena, or feeling tone, is things which are unpleasant, or more simply, things which we don't like within our meditation. I think anybody who's done serious meditation practice for any length of time is familiar with these things. We get uncomfortable in our posture. We get restless. The mind wanders, and we wish it didn't wander. So that sort of resistance, that sort of pushback, is very much familiar. And in a way that's maybe more directly perceivable, this is, of course, a form of dukkha, or a form of suffering too. The mind doesn't like these things, so we want to get away from it. We want to kind of push them back. Now, when we start to become more aware of these feeling tones, just on their kind of base level, on this level of Vedena, we can practice in such a way where things that we don't like, things which are less pleasant, arise, but we don't have that conditioned reaction to them. We start to relate to them in a more just kind of bare sensory way. And the interesting thing is, when we change that relationship with things, the unpleasant loses its power over us. We don't suffer even though things are still unpleasant, because we're not clinging to them. We are not pushing back against them in a direct, tangible way. We're allowing the experience to come and go in a natural, organic way, as they tend to do. Now, the final feeling tone is often the sneakiest one to be aware of, because by its very nature, it's less obvious. And that's aspects within our experience which are neutral in feeling tone, things which are neither particularly pleasant nor unpleasant. And really, probably 90% of what we experience in our sittings would fall into this category. Things are just kind of there, not pleasant, not unpleasant, just, being here moment by moment. And so the kind of shadow side to these sort of experiences isn't in a strong reaction of the mind. It's actually in the failure to notice them at all. When things aren't pleasant or unpleasant, they don't catch our attention in quite the same way. So the mind has this tendency to kind of tune them out. And when we tune things out, that means we are not here. We are not present in this moment, as would be the goal of our mindfulness meditation. And so, again, learning just how much of our experience is neutral and learning to look a little bit deeper at those experiences can be really valuable for our meditation. So put together as a whole, we can see how these three forms of Vedena relate to three of the five hindrances or obstacles that tend to come up in our meditation practice. So specifically, the pleasant Vedena or feeling tone often leads to sense desire or grasping after things that we want or wish that we had. The unpleasant Vedena or feeling tone tends to correlate with hatred or ill will. We want to push things away. We wish that we weren't here. Or the third form of feeling tone, that neutral, neither pleasant or unpleasant, tends to correspond with sloth and torpor, that sort of dullness, that sort of tuning out, missing our experience in the first place rather than being fully present for it. And so starting to get the bigger picture of these, we can start to perhaps see how this can be useful in our meditation practice. So by cultivating a sort of awareness that allows us to be aware of feeling tone rather than just letting the feeling tone be, we can be mindful, we can be vigilant of these hindrances, of these less desirable states if they tend to crop up within our meditation. And this leads to the gateway of equanimity, that state of mind where we're fully present, where we're here for our experience, but we're not so swept up by it. We're not caught up in the dukkha or the suffering within our experience. And of course, that is kind of the ultimate goal. The deeper purpose of our meditation is to be able to live or experience each moment with a greater sense of equanimity, with that sort of calm presence that isn't wrapped up in the hindrances. And so with that theory out of the way here, we're going to put this into practice with a short guided meditation. And so specifically today, we are going to be looking at these three sorts of feeling tones and notice how the mind responds to them. Now, this sort of practice isn't meant to be the type of thing you would do all the time as like your daily practice. It's more kind of a sort of meditative cross-training. It's something we can do at times to become more aware of this Vedena or feeling tone so that more and more within our practice, it becomes subconscious. It's not something we need to specifically look at so much. So as you're ready here, just find a comfortable place to sit and we'll begin. And just before we transition into this portion, friendly reminder, if you enjoy my videos, if you enjoy my content, please be sure to click the like button. Please be sure to subscribe to my channel because I'll be putting out new videos like this where we can learn more about our meditation. But with that out of the way here, let's begin our practice. So as we begin, first establishing the physical posture of the body. Feeling free to use any props, any cushions you would like so that you can sit comfortably for the whole time here. And finding what I might call a balanced posture within the body. One where there's a certain amount of lift, certain amount of height or energy, but also an equal sense of grounding, sense of rooting into the floor, and that ability to relax and let go. And from this balanced posture, first just begin by noticing what it's like to be here in this moment. No need to change anything, no need to make things anything other than what they already are. And notice what your experience is within that. Specifically, you might feel a sense of the body. Within the body, you may choose to notice your breath. Beyond your body, taking in any sounds within your environment, or any other sensory stimuli that may arise. And as well, internally, noticing whatever may arise within your mind. Any thoughts, any reactions or feelings. Let those arise too, naturally. In order to tune into this Vedana or feeling tone, we need to have this really open, receptive quality of awareness, so that regardless of what form or what feeling tone our experience is taking, we can be there with that. We can connect with it. So let's settle here for just another minute or so, relaxing the body, finding that stillness, finding that calm. And within that, really opening up to whatever may be arising for you. Taking it all in for just a few more moments here with no specific intention to it. And using this baseline of awareness as our starting point, we can begin to somewhat filter the awareness towards particular forms of Vedana, particular forms of feeling tone, as I discussed in the introduction. So here in your seat, notice anything that enters the awareness that has a somewhat pleasing quality to it, a pleasant quality even. This doesn't need to be rapturous, it doesn't need to be overwhelming pleasure, simply something that has that kind of pleasant tone or feeling quality to it. And if you're a little stuck for something to tune into, often a good starting point is to notice how the air feels moving in and out through the nostrils. Noting how the inhale has that kind of cool, pleasing quality to it. Whereas typically the exhale has that kind of warm, soothing quality to it. And as we tune into what's pleasant, notice how the mind responds to that Vedana or to that feeling tone. Are you noticing any tendency for the mind to want to linger there, to want to stay there? Or if you're having trouble tuning into that feeling tone, is there some desire that there were more pleasant feelings arising? Both of these could be considered a form of dukkha that relates to the more pleasant Vedana or the more pleasant feeling tone. Shifting our filter here, shifting our lens a little bit now, moving from the more pleasant feeling tone, the more pleasant Vedana, and tuning into anything within our experience that is somewhat less pleasing, somewhat less pleasant in nature. Is there any discomfort within your seated posture, even just a very slight discomfort? Is there any restlessness or anxiety anticipating what might be coming next? This sort of pushback, this sort of contracting of the mind, again, is an expression of dukkha. It's an expression of clinging to our experience. In this case, typically through the form of resistance, through that desire for things to be other than what they already are. Let's sit with that here for just a few more moments. And finally now, shifting our lens to the third and the most subtle of the feeling tones, and that is all that within our awareness which is neutral in tone. It's neither pleasant nor unpleasant in nature. And again, if you're having trouble tuning into this, simple suggestion might be, notice the contact with the earth beneath you. Or maybe notice the contact of your clothing on the skin. Both of these are things that are always within our awareness. They're always something we're perceiving, but because they are so neutral, the mind, more often than not, will just tune them out. We'll kind of clear them from our awareness. So here we can practice specifically tuning in to those neutral qualityed sensations, becoming aware of things that the mind might normally filter out, so that we can be more present for that experience. And so, more likely than not, as we've worked through this practice, even while intending to tune to one particular tone or another, it's the nature of the attention to shift. And things will have entered the awareness that aren't specifically of that filter. It's not something we can perfectly do or do without, some shifts of the attention. And so here, for just the next minute or two, allowing all of the feeling tones to enter, and whatever arises within the awareness, just notice what quality it has. You might even consider adding a quiet internal mental note of the feeling tone, specifically noting pleasant, unpleasant, or neutral as the quality of that experience. So let's take another minute or two, opening up to that, becoming aware of all these different feeling tones and how they tend to come and go as they do. And as a final phase for today's practice, as we notice these different forms of Vedena arising, as we may notice the mind reacting in its conditioned way to these feeling tones, asking if we might be able to let go of those conditioned patterns as we see them arise. If the mind feels attached or clinging to something pleasant, can we let that go? If we feel resistance or pushback against something which is less pleasant, can we let that go too? And as things which are neutral arise, can we be connected with that experience? Can we really receive it with a sense of presence, with a sense of awareness? Through doing so, we are practicing equanimity. We are finding that calm awareness without getting stuck in our conditioned patterns of hindrance. So let's settle through that for another minute or so. And noting how the mind may have wandered, noting how even with this intention to practice equanimity, it's not always automatic, it's not always easy. But like all skills in our meditation, with a deliberate sense of practice, with some consistency in that practice, more and more we can learn to let go of the conditioned reactions to these forms of Vedena or feeling tones. So as we prepare to wrap up for today, just bringing awareness back into the body, back into your posture, and perhaps sitting just ever so slightly taller here. Joining the hands in front of the heart. Thank you so much, as always, for joining in today's practice. You can lower the chin down towards the chest, open our eyes. May our practice bring benefit to all beings.